This Core Castle guide will tell you what kind of lines and what kind of items you will want for your support and crowd control heroes for the physical summon meta waving build. And we start right away with not just one, but actually two heroes, the Pure Wizard and the Dark Necromancer. Now this duo is a core part of the game and they should be included in every single build you make.
I'm not kidding, they are the absolutely best heroes in the entire game.
The best lines for both of these units would be the legendary flat cooldown reduction lines and the percentage cooldown reduction lines. They don't want any other lines, they don't do anything with any other lines. So the optimal item would have one legendary flat cooldown reduction line and one percentage cooldown reduction line. And the second best item you can get for them would be having two of those percentage cooldown reduction lines on that item. Both are extremely strong options, but since their base cooldown is low, having that flat minus 2.0 seconds cooldown reduction is a little bit stronger than having a percentage cooldown reduction line on them. But either way, if you can get a double cooldown item, it should go to these heroes. And note that I said the double cooldown item is the best for them, because in this game it's not possible to get an item with 3 cooldown reduction lines, so double cooldown item is the best you can get. And having a low cooldown Pure Wizard is your key for your success and key for you to advance on higher and higher level demon horns basically. But especially in early game, it's beneficial for you to try and get your Dark Necromancer to double proc. And what does mean is that the cooldown of Dark Necromancer is lower than the cooldown of Pure Wizard, meaning that Dark Necromancer's ability will be cast more often, and this will most likely make your build more stable, more reliable, and you will be able to more consistently win your waves, especially when you are trying to tackle the first 2 or 3 Devil Horn levels in the game. And for runes, you can use the global skill level +1 runes. They don't really need runes on their own. Pure Wizard don't need any kind of personal runes. For Dark Necromancer, you could use the skill duration runes if you happen to have a really good item for your Dark Necromancer and you happen to get those skill duration runes. And now, for example, these are the items I am currently wearing on my Pure Wizard on my main account that is on 5 million waves in the game. Okay, moving on. We have quite a few heroes left to go through, and next up we have Slingers. Now Slingers' role is to be the crowd control unit of your build. Their job is to stop the enemy units from advancing and getting to your castle, and that's why you will want crowd control lines for your Slingers, the best line being the stun lines. Because Slingers can hit both flying enemies and ground enemies. And flying enemies, these are flying enemies, they cannot be knocked back, they can only be stunned. So stun works for both ground and flying enemies. And after that, the best lines are slow line and knockback lines. And then the secondary lines would be attack speed and maybe +1 summon unit lines. So ideally, if you combine the lines in both of your items, you would want to have 3 or 4 stun lines, 1 slow line, and then maybe 1 or 2 of the lines like knockback and attack speed lines, depending what you can get with your luck. And for runes, you will want to fill them with attack speed runes, because more attack speed means more spears thrown per second, and that means more crowd control. Very nice, very good. And now from ground we ascend to the heavens, as next up we will take a look at angels. Now these heavenly beings have a very important job in your build. They act as meat shields.
Wait, what?
Now their job is to body block the flying enemies, while also dealing a little bit of damage to them. And I would say that angel items don't take as high priority as the other units' items, so try to get items for your slingers and damage dealers first. But the best lines for angels are actually the legendary damage reduction lines, because those lines will help them stay alive a little bit longer before they get crushed like insert. And after that, you would want to fill the items with damage lines, so critical chance, critical damage, lightning damage, percentage damage, maybe even stun lines if you don't get those. So those would be your options, but the best ones would be the damage reduction lines, because you really want them to stay alive for as long as possible. And for runes, it would most likely be attack speed runes again, but don't focus on getting attack speed runes on your angels. They are on the lowest priority in your list. Get attack speed runes for your other units first. For example, these are my angel items on my 5 million wave level account. They still don't have any runes. And again, time flies. Let's move on. And talking about time, let's take a look at Chrono. Now, Chrono's role in your waving build is to increase the game speed, which means more waves done per hour, which means faster progression. And he is a really important unit in your waving build as well, because of that very reason. You always want as fast progression as possible. And for him, you really want to keep his ability up and running 100% of the time, or at least close to that, which means the best lines you want for Chrono are percentage cooldown lines. And also secondarily, the flat cooldown lines also work, but he has a very high base level of cooldown, so that means the percentage cooldown lines will reduce that more than the flat minus 2.0 second cooldown lines will. So the ideal items would have a double percentage cooldown reduction for both items. And now if you are thinking if you should be using yellow promotion or blue promotion, I would say the simplified guide would be if you have at least 1% cooldown, use the yellow promotion. If you have 3% cooldown lines for him, use the blue promotion. And for secondary lines, he don't really need anything, but if you can pair these cooldown lines with an MP cost reduction line, that will also help out because Chrono can use a lot of MP. So if you happen to get lucky enough with a double cooldown item with a MP cost reduction line as a third line, that would be the very optimal item you could get for Chrono. And MP cost reduction brings us to runes. Now the best runes for Chrono would be the MP cost reduction runes. So if you are struggling with mana, try to get at least one MP cost reduction rune for both items for Chrono, and that will surely help you a lot because he can really gobble up a lot of MP if he doesn't have any MP cost reduction lines. And then we have Smith. Now Smith needs the same kind of items as Chrono, so percentage cooldown lines, double percentage cooldown lines would be the best ones for Smith because his base cooldown again is high. The percentage cooldown is better than the legendary flat cooldown lines. Now, whoa, okay, hold your horses for a moment, because for waving you actually don't even need cooldown for Smith, because if you need to use Smith healing during your wave, you only use it once anyway, so having that cooldown won't really make any difference for him in terms of waving. So instead, if you are able to get yellow E tier items with that yellow lines, and you are able to get an item that has a yellow line of like cooldown skill level +1, bonus gold skill level +1, damage skill level or hero damage skill level +1, or anything that's usable, you can just place those items on Smith. The other lines on that item don't matter because those skill level +1 lines will help your whole build in general. So for waving you can use that. For example, I use the cooldown skill level +1 lines for my Smith in my waving build. Now, of course, for other game modes, like colonies for example, you will want that cooldown reduction for Smith, so for that reason you will also need to get those double cooldown items for your Smith as well. And runes, they are not needed for Smith. Now, if you need to place some global skill level +1 runes on some hero for your build, you can use the Smith items for that reason. And we have 2 more heroes left to go. Next up is Dorothy. Now, Dorothy is another crowd control hero whose job is to keep those ground monsters at bay while giving them the poison debuff, which will lower their defense. Now the best line you want to get for Dorothy are legendary +1 summoned unit lines, and then crowd control lines. Attack speed would be the best one, and then secondarily stun lines and attack speed lines. And for runes you would also want attack speed runes for Dorothy, but she takes a really low priority in that list. Try to get your attack speed runes for your important units first, which would be your damage dealers, which we went through in the previous video. If you haven't seen that, I will link it down in the description box below down there. And also your slingers. Those are the most important heroes for your attack speed runes, because Dorothy also doesn't really have a spot in your late game builds. You don't really have room for her in your gold auto battle build for your late game, so she will usually not be used in there, so having those attack speed items are not a high priority for Dorothy. And then finally we have the Dark Eyes Wizard. Now this chilly dude has 2 important roles in your waving build. First one is that he can freeze the ground monsters with his ability, and the second one is that he can freeze the flying monsters with his basic attacks. So you will want flat cooldown, percentage cooldown and attack speed cooldown lines for this hero. Now attack speed is a really good line for your waving, because that means he can use more basic attacks more often, which means he can freeze more flying enemies. And you also will want cooldown for other game modes as well, so ideally you will want a mix of both of these lines for his items. And for runes, you actually want really specific runes for this special guy, because this guy actually wants, yeah, I'm just kidding, attack speed runes again. So yeah, you will be farming that beginner dungeon for a while. So, any questions? Now would be the time.